The ship had been silent for too long. Yuna walked through the dark corridor, her footsteps the only sound in the cold metal hallway. The lights above her head flickered weakly, giving just enough glow to see the path ahead. She carried a small bag filled with the last of their medical supplies. There was not much left. A few bandages, some pain medicine, nothing that could truly help anyone if things got worse. She was young for a Keth, barely 30 cycles old. Her skin, which should have glowed with soft blue light like all healthy members of her species, was dim now, faded. Like everyone else on the ship, she was slowly dying. The Keth were tall beings with long arms and gentle faces. Their bodies produced natural light, a beautiful glow that showed their emotions and their health. When a Keth was happy, they shone bright. When they were sick or sad, the light grew weak. Looking around at her people now, Yuna saw nothing but dim flickers. 200 souls, all fatting together in the darkness of space. 17 cycles. That was how long they had been drifting. 17 cycles since the engines failed. 17 cycles since their distress signal went quiet. 17 cycles of watching their food supplies shrink and their hope disappear. Yuna entered the cargo bay where most of the survivors had gathered. Families sat together on the cold floor, wrapped in thin blankets. Children slept in their parents' arms, too weak to play or even cry. The elders sat against the walls with their eyes closed, whispering old prayers to gods who seemed very far away. A small child looked up as Yuna passed by. The girl's name was Bora, and she was only 5 cycles old. Her light was so dim that Yuna had to look closely to see it at all. "Are we going to be okay?" Bora asked in a tiny voice. Yuna knelt down beside her and tried to smile. "We are going to be fine," she said. "Just rest now." It was a lie. Yuna knew it was a lie, but what else could she say to a child? She continued through the cargo bay, checking on the sick and the injured. There were many of both. Some had wounds from the disaster that had damaged their ship so long ago. Others were simply weak from hunger and cold. The life support systems were failing, and the temperature dropped a little more each day. When she finished her rounds, Yuna made her way to the bridge. The door slid open with a tired groan, and she stepped inside. Captain Tiho sat alone in the command chair, staring at the empty view screen. He was old, the oldest Keth on the ship, with gray patches on his skin and deep lines around his eyes. He had been a good captain once, leading trading missions across peaceful star systems. Now he led a ship of ghosts toward nothing. "Captain," Yuna said softly. Tiho did not turn around. "How are they?" he asked. "The same, maybe worse." She paused. "The children are not eating. They say they are not hungry, but I think they are just too tired to eat." Tiho was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "I remember when we left our homeworld. The fires were so bright behind us, the screams so loud. I told everyone that we would find safety, that I would protect them." "You did protect them," Yuna said. "You got us away from the burning." "I got them away from one death," Tiho replied, "only to bring them to another." Yuna did not know what to say. She looked at the view screen, at the endless black emptiness that surrounded them. No stars were close enough to reach. No planets were near enough to land on. They were alone in the void, a tiny metal box filled with dying people floating through nothing. The burning had taken everything from them, their homeworld, their cities, their families. When the war came, it came fast and without mercy. Enemy ships had filled the sky, raining fire on everything below. Millions died in the first day. By the end of the first week, there was nothing left to save. Tiho had gathered as many survivors as he could and fled into space. They had hoped to find allies, to reach the territories of friendly species who might help them. But the damage to their ship was too great. The engines failed, the navigation systems crashed, and they found themselves lost in a region of space that no one had mapped. For 17 cycles, they had drifted. They had rationed their food until there was almost none left. They had conserved power until the lights barely worked. They had sent distress signals until the communication systems died. Now there was nothing left to do but wait. "The elders are talking about the long sleep," Yuna said quietly. Tiho closed his eyes. The long sleep was their term for death, a peaceful ending that the Keth believed led to a gentle rest among the stars. Some of the elders had already decided to stop eating, to let themselves fade away rather than suffer any longer. "I cannot stop them," Tiho said. "I have no right to ask them to keep suffering." "But the children—" "The children will outlast us by a few days at most." Tiho's voice cracked. "I am sorry, Yuna. I am sorry I could not do more." Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes, but she blinked them away. Crying would not help anyone. Nothing would help anyone now. She was about to leave the bridge when a sudden sound made her freeze. An alarm, loud and sharp, cutting through the silence like a knife. Tiho sat up straight, his eyes wide. "What is that?" Yuna rushed to the sensor console, her fingers moving over the controls. The screen flickered to life, showing data that she could barely understand. But one thing was clear. "Something is coming," she said. "Something big." Tiho stood and moved to her side. Together, they watched the sensor display as a massive shape appeared on the screen. It was moving fast, dropping out of hyperspace directly ahead of them. "A ship," Tiho whispered. Yuna felt her heart pounding in her chest. A ship. After 17 cycles of nothing, a ship had found them. But was it a rescue or something worse? The galaxy was full of dangers. Raiders, slavers, pirates who preyed on the weak. A crippled refugee vessel would be easy pickings. The view screen activated, showing the space ahead of them. And there it was. The ship that emerged from the fold in space was unlike anything Yuna had ever seen. It was huge, bigger than any vessel in the Keth fleet. Its hull was dark and covered with thick armor plating. Massive guns lined its sides, pointed in every direction. Scars and burn marks covered its surface, evidence of countless battles. It was a warship, a machine built for destruction. Yuna felt all hope drain from her body. They had been found, but not by friends. This was a predator, and they were the prey. "May the stars have mercy on us," Tiho whispered. The warship moved closer, its massive form blocking out the distant stars. A light on the communication console began to blink. Someone was trying to contact them. The communication light kept blinking. Tiho stared at it like it was a poisonous creature waiting to bite him. His hand hovered over the button, shaking slightly. "Captain," Yuna said, her voice barely a whisper, "what do we do?" Tiho did not answer immediately. His mind raced through all the possibilities. Raiders would not bother to talk. They would simply attack and take what they wanted. Slavers might try to negotiate, offering false promises before capturing them all. But there was no point in running. Their engines were dead. Their weapons were useless. They were completely helpless. With a deep breath, Tiho pressed the button. The view screen crackled with static. Then a voice came through, speaking in a language that Tiho had never heard before. It was harsh and strange, filled with sounds that did not exist in the Keth language. The words meant nothing to him. "I do not understand," Tiho said aloud, more to himself than anyone else. The message repeated. The same strange words, the same unknown language. But then the ship's old translation system began to work. It was slow and damaged, but after several long minutes, fragments of the message began to appear on a side screen. "Terran naval vessel, detecting life signs. Do you require assistance?" Yuna read the words out loud. "Terran? What is a Terran?" Tiho shook his head. He had traveled many star systems in his life and met many species. He had traded with the Velani, negotiated with the Kroth, even spoken briefly with the mysterious elders of the Outer Rim. But he had never heard of Terrans. "Perhaps they are from the far regions," he said, "beyond the mapped territories." The message came again, clearer this time as the translator adjusted. This is Commander Hana Park of the Terran naval vessel Indomitable. We are detecting life signs aboard your vessel and significant damage to your systems. Do you require assistance? Please respond. Yuna felt a tiny spark of hope in her chest, but she quickly pushed it down. Hope was dangerous. Hope could break you worse than despair. It could be a trick, she said. They could be trying to make us lower our guard. Our guard is already as low as it can be, Tiho replied. We have nothing to defend ourselves with. He pressed the communication button again and spoke slowly, hoping the translator would work both ways. This is Captain Tiho of the Keth vessel Velith's Hope. We are a refugee ship. Our engines are damaged. Our life support is failing. We have 200 survivors aboard, including children. We need help. There was a pause. Then the voice came back, different now, softer somehow, more careful. Understood, Velith's Hope. Hold your position. We are dispatching medical and engineering teams to your location. Please do not be alarmed by our approach. Tiho looked at Yuna. Neither of them knew what to think. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Commander Hana Park studied the sensor data on her screen. The alien ship was in terrible condition. Hull breaches in multiple sections. Life support functioning at less than 20%. No power to weapons or engines. It was a miracle anyone was still alive. She was a woman of medium height with short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. At 43 years old, she had served in the Terran Navy for 2 decades. She had seen battles, disasters, and horrors that would break most people. But something about this situation made her heart heavy. Lieutenant Kang, she said without turning around, what is the status of their vessel? Lieutenant Minyu Kang stood at the tactical station, his fingers moving over the controls. He was younger than the commander, with a serious face and a calm voice. Multiple critical failures, Commander. Their reactor is barely functional. Hull integrity is compromised in at least 6 sections. Life support will fail completely within 30 to 40 hours. Survivors. Sensors detect approximately 200 life forms. Many appear weak. Some are very small. Children, most likely. Commander Park was quiet for a moment. Then she turned to face her bridge crew. Prep Shuttle Bay 1. I want medical teams ready in 10 minutes. Get engineering to gather repair supplies, and contact the galley. The communications officer, a young woman named Yunji, looked up in surprise. The galley, Commander. Those people are starving, Yunji. I want food prepared. Lots of it. And tell the cooks to be ready to adjust for unknown dietary needs. Yes, Commander. Minyu stepped closer to Hana and lowered his voice. Commander, we know nothing about this species. They could be hostile. This could be a trap. Hana looked at him with calm eyes. Look at that ship, Lieutenant. Does that look like a threat to you? Minyu glanced at the view screen. The alien vessel was dark and battered, barely holding together. Lights flickered weakly in a few windows. It looked like a corpse floating in space. No, Commander, he admitted. Those are refugees, Minyu. They are running from something terrible. They are dying. She paused. We are going to help them. But the regulations. The regulations say we should report unknown species to command and wait for instructions. The regulations also say we should preserve life whenever possible. Hana turned back to the view screen. I choose to follow the second regulation. Minyu nodded slowly. He had served under Commander Park for 3 years. He knew she would not change her mind once it was made up, and deep down he agreed with her. Within 15 minutes, 2 shuttles launched from the Indomitable and flew toward the Keth vessel. Yuna watched them approach through the cargo bay's small viewport, her heart beating fast. They are really coming, she said to no one in particular. Around her, the other Keth had gathered to see. Some looked hopeful, others looked terrified. Many simply stared with empty eyes, too exhausted to feel anything at all. When the shuttles docked with the Velith's Hope, there was a long moment of silence. Then the airlock doors opened, and Yuna saw her first humans. They were strange creatures, smaller than Keth, with flat faces and compact bodies. Their skin came in different shades, from pale to brown, and they had hair growing from their heads in various colors. They wore matching uniforms and carried boxes filled with supplies. The first human to step forward was a woman with a kind face. She moved slowly, keeping her hands visible. Behind her came others, some carrying medical equipment, some carrying tools. "Hello," the woman said, her voice gentle. "My name is Salmon. I am a doctor. We are here to help." Yuna did not move. She was frozen in place, unsure what to do. Then little Bora stepped forward. The small child walked up to the human doctor and looked up at her with wide, curious eyes. "Are you going to save us?" Bora asked. Salmon knelt down to meet the child's eyes. She smiled warmly. "We are going to try very hard," she said. "Is that okay?" Bora nodded slowly. Then she reached out and touched the human's hand, as if testing to make sure she was real. Salmon did not pull away. She held the child's small hand gently and looked around at the starving, frightened Keth who filled the cargo bay. "We brought food," she said loudly so everyone could hear, "and medicine and blankets. We are going to take care of all of you." The Keth looked at each other, unsure what to believe. This was not how the galaxy worked. Strangers did not simply appear and offer help. There was always a price, always a trick. But then the humans began unpacking their boxes. They handed out food packets and warm blankets. They set up medical stations and began treating the sick. They moved with purpose and efficiency, asking nothing in return. Yuna watched as a human medic named Doyun treated an elderly Keth who had been unable to walk for days. He was gentle and careful, speaking softly, even though the old one could not understand his words. Something strange happened inside Yuna, something she had not felt in 17 cycles. She felt hope. The humans worked without rest. Yuna watched them move through the ship, carrying supplies, repairing broken systems, and treating the sick. They seemed to have endless energy, even though she could see the tiredness in their eyes. They pushed through it anyway. In the cargo bay, the atmosphere had completely changed. The Keth, who had been silent and hopeless for so long, were now eating warm food and wrapped in thick blankets. Children laughed for the first time in cycles as human crew members played simple games with them. The elders wept quietly, overwhelmed by the sudden kindness. Dr. Salmon had set up a medical station in the center of the room. She moved from patient to patient, checking vital signs and giving medicine. Her assistant, Doyun, followed behind her with supplies. He was a young man with soft eyes and a gentle manner. Every time he helped someone, he would bow his head slightly and offer a small smile. Yuna approached him as he finished treating an injured child. "You have been working for many hours," she said carefully, still getting used to the translation device. "Do you not need rest?" Doyun looked up at her and shrugged. "There will be time to rest later. Right now, people need help." "But why?" Yuna asked. The question had been burning inside her since the humans arrived. "Why are you doing this? You do not know us. We have nothing to give you in return." Doyun seemed confused by the question. He tilted his head and thought for a moment before answering. "Because you needed help," he said simply. "That is enough reason." Yuna did not understand. In her experience, the galaxy did not work this way. Every species she had ever met operated on exchanges. You give something, you get something. Trade was the foundation of civilization. The idea that someone would help a stranger for no reward was completely foreign to her. "But the cost," she pressed. "The food, the medicine, the time of your crew, these things have value." Doyun nodded. "Yes, they do, but some things are more valuable than credits or trade goods." He paused, searching for the right words. "Humans believe that helping others is— how do I say this? It is part of what makes us human. If we saw someone suffering and did nothing, we would lose something important about ourselves." Yuna was silent for a long time. She had never heard anyone speak like this before. Meanwhile, deep in the engine room of the Velith's Hope, a different kind of work was happening. Jisoo, the chief engineer from the Indomitable, was lying on her back underneath the damaged reactor core. Her uniform was covered in grease and burn marks. Sparks flew around her as she worked on the broken systems. She had been down there for 11 hours straight. "Pass me the plasma welder," she called out to her assistant, a young engineer named Hyunwoo. He handed her the tool and watched nervously. "The core is very unstable," he said. "If we make a mistake—" "We will not make a mistake," Jisoo interrupted. Her voice was tired but determined. "These people need power. Without it, life support fails. I am not going to let that happen." Hyunwoo nodded and handed her another tool when she asked for it. He had worked with Jisoo for 2 years and knew better than to argue with her. When she decided something needed to be done, she would do it even if it killed her. 3 more hours passed. Jisoo emerged from under the reactor, her face covered in sweat and grime, but she was smiling. "Try it now," she said. Hyunwoo activated the reactor controls. There was a loud humming sound, then a steady pulse of energy began flowing through the ship. Lights flickered on throughout the corridors. The heating system kicked in. The air began to feel warmer. In the cargo bay, the Keth looked up in wonder as the darkness gave way to light. Children cheered. Adults embraced each other. The ship was coming back to life. Captain Tiho found Jisoo in the corridor outside the engine room. She was sitting on the floor, drinking water from a bottle and looking utterly exhausted. "You fixed it," he said, his voice full of disbelief. "Our engineers said it was impossible to repair without a full space dock." Jisoo grinned. "Humans are stubborn. We do not like being told things are impossible." Tiho did not know what to say. He simply bowed his head in the Keth gesture of deep respect. Later that day, Captain Tiho was invited aboard the Indomitable to meet with Commander Park. He was nervous as the shuttle carried him across the short distance between the ships. He had never been aboard a warship before. The Keth were a peaceful species, builders and traders, not fighters. When he stepped onto the Indomitable, he was struck by how different it was from his own vessel. Everything was metal and sharp edges. Crew members moved with military precision. Weapons were visible everywhere. It was a machine built for war. But the people were not what he expected. They nodded politely as he passed. Some even smiled. One crew member offered him a drink of water, which he accepted gratefully. Commander Park met him in a conference room near the bridge. She stood when he entered and offered her hand in what he assumed was a human greeting. He took it gently, still not sure of the custom. "Please sit," she said, gesturing to a chair. "Are your people being taken care of?" "Yes," Tiho replied, still amazed by everything that was happening. "Your crew has done more for us in 1 day than I thought possible. I do not know how to thank you." Hana waved her hand. "No thanks are needed. We saw people in trouble, we helped. That is what Terrans do." "Terrans," Tiho repeated. "We have never heard of your species before. Where do you come from?" Hana smiled slightly. "We come from a planet called Earth, in a system far from here. We are relatively new to space travel compared to many species, only a few centuries. And yet you have such powerful ships." Tiho glanced out the window at the massive form of the Indomitable. "We learned quickly," Hana said. Her smile faded a little. "We had to. The galaxy is not always kind to newcomers." Tiho understood. His own people had learned that lesson in the hardest way possible. "Commander," he said carefully, "I must ask, what do you expect in return for your help? We are refugees. We have nothing of value. No wealth, no technology, no resources." Hana looked at him for a long moment. Her expression was serious but kind. "Captain Tiho, we expect nothing, absolutely nothing." "But—" "Let me tell you something about humans," Hana interrupted gently. "Our history is filled with darkness, war, cruelty, suffering. We have done terrible things to each other over the centuries, but we have also learned. We have learned that kindness is not weakness, compassion is not foolishness. Helping others, especially those who cannot help themselves, is one of the few things that gives our existence meaning. She leaned forward slightly. Your people are refugees, you lost your home, you have suffered greatly. I cannot undo that suffering, but I can make sure you reach safety. I can feed your hungry and heal your sick. And I can promise you that as long as my ship is between you and danger, nothing will harm you. Tiho felt tears forming in his eyes. In all his years, through all his travels, he had never met anyone like this human commander. We will escort you to a neutral station where you can find supplies and perhaps passage to a new home, Hana continued. The journey will take several days. My crew will stay aboard your ship to help with repairs and medical care until we arrive. This is too much, Tiho managed to say. How can we ever repay you? Hana stood and looked out the window at the stars. Someday you will meet someone who needs help, someone weak, someone lost, someone afraid. When that day comes, help them. That is how you repay us. Tiho rose from his chair and bowed deeply. I give you my word, Commander. The Keth will never forget what you have done. Hana turned back to him and smiled. Then let us make sure there are Keth left to remember. 2 days passed in peace. The convoy moved slowly through space, the Indomitable flying beside the Velith's Hope like a guardian watching over its charge. Human engineers continued their work on the Keth vessel, repairing systems and strengthening the damaged hull. Medical teams treated the sick and fed the hungry. For the first time in 17 cycles, the Keth began to believe they might actually survive. Yuna spent much of her time learning about the humans. She followed Do-yun on his medical rounds, watching how he treated patients and asking questions about human medicine. She was amazed by how different their biology was from the Keth. Humans had red blood instead of blue. They required oxygen to breathe. They could not produce light from their skin. And yet, despite these differences, they seemed so similar in the ways that mattered. Tell me about Earth, she asked Do-yun one evening as they sat in the cargo bay together. Do-yun smiled at the question. Earth is beautiful, he said. It has great oceans of water and mountains that touch the clouds, forests filled with millions of different creatures, deserts that stretch for thousands of kilometers. It is a dangerous world, full of predators and storms and disasters, but it is home. It sounds frightening, Yuna said. It is. Humans evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day. We had to become strong to survive. Stubborn, adaptable, he paused. Maybe that is why we help others now, because we remember what it felt like to be weak and afraid. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Commander Park was reviewing navigation data with Lieutenant Kang. They were 2 days away from the neutral station. 2 more days and the Keth would be safe. Any contacts on sensors? Hana asked. Minyu checked his display. Nothing, Commander. The area appears clear. But Hana felt uneasy. Her instincts, developed over decades of service, told her something was wrong. This region of space was not as empty as it seemed. She had studied the maps and knew that several dangerous groups operated nearby. Raiders, smugglers, and worse. Stay alert, she ordered. I want all sensor stations at full power. Yes, Commander. The hours passed slowly. The crew maintained their watch, eyes fixed on screens and sensors. The Keth vessel floated peacefully beside them, its lights now shining steadily thanks to the repaired reactor. Then, without warning, everything changed. Contact, shouted Yunji from the communications station. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected, ships dropping out of jump directly ahead. Hana was on her feet instantly. How many? 6, no, wait. 6 confirmed, all large vessels. Configuration matches Vorn Syndicate warships. The bridge went silent. Everyone knew what the Vorn Syndicate was. Slavers, criminals, monsters who captured other species and sold them as property. They were feared across a dozen star systems for their cruelty and their strength. Minyu's face was pale. Commander, 6 Vorn warships. We are heavily outnumbered. Hana did not respond immediately. She stared at the viewscreen as the enemy ships appeared one by one, their dark hulls bristling with weapons. They formed a blockade directly in the convoy's path. A communication signal came through. "Terran vessel," said a harsh voice. "This is Commander Gion of the Vorn Syndicate. We have no quarrel with you. Surrender the refugee ship and its cargo and you may leave in peace." Cargo? They called living beings cargo. Hana felt her hands tighten into fists. "Commander," Minyu said quietly, "we cannot win this fight. 6-1 odds. If we engage, we will be destroyed." Hana did not look at him. Her eyes remained fixed on the enemy fleet. "Commander, please, we should retreat while we still can. The regulations." "The regulations." Hana finally turned to face her second in command. Her expression was calm, but her eyes burned with cold fire. "The regulations say we should abandon 200 innocent people to slavery, 200 people who trusted us, who believed us when we said we would protect them." "I am not saying I like it," Minyu replied, "but the mathematics are clear. We cannot win." "Then we will lose." Hana's voice was steady, "but we will not run." She turned to the crew. "Sound general quarters, all hands to battle stations. Arm all weapons, raise shields to maximum." The bridge erupted into activity. Alarms blared throughout the ship. Crew members rushed to their posts. The Indomitable began to change, transforming from a peaceful escort into a weapon of war. Minyu stared at his commander. "Hana," he said, using her name for the first time in years, "this is suicide." "Perhaps." Hana sat down in her command chair and fixed her eyes on the enemy fleet. "But those people back there have already lost everything. Their homes, their families, their world. They have been drifting alone in the darkness for 17 cycles, waiting to die. And then they found hope. They found us." She paused. "I will not let that hope be for nothing." She opened a communication channel to the Vorn fleet. Her voice was broadcast across all frequencies, heard by every ship in the area. "Commander Gion, this is Commander Hana Park of the Terran naval vessel Indomitable. Those refugees are under the protection of the Terran Navy. They are not cargo. They are not property. They are living beings with the right to freedom and safety." She took a breath. "If you want them, you will have to come through us." There was a long pause. Then Gion's voice came back, filled with cruel amusement. "You are one ship, Commander. We are 6. Your courage is admirable but foolish." "Maybe," Hana replied, "but Terrans are stubborn that way." She cut the channel and looked at her crew. Every face was serious, every eye determined. They knew what was coming. They were afraid, but not one of them suggested running. "All hands," Hana announced over the ship's intercom. "This is the commander. In a few minutes we will engage a superior enemy force. The odds are against us. Many of us may not survive. But behind us are 200 innocent people who are counting on us. They have no weapons, no shields, no way to defend themselves. They are relying on us to keep them safe." She paused. "I am not going to let them down, and I know you will not either. This is what we trained for. This is why we serve. Today we show the galaxy what Terrans are made of." The ship's engines roared to life. The Indomitable turned to face the enemy fleet, its weapons charging, its shields glowing with power. On the Velith's Hope, Yuna watched through the viewport as the Terran Warship moved between them and the Vorn fleet. She understood what was happening. She had seen slavers before. She knew what the Vorn would do to her people if they were captured. But the humans were not running. They were not surrendering. They were standing in the way. "They are going to fight," she whispered. "They are going to fight for us." Captain Tiho stood beside her, his old face wet with tears. "They will die," he said. "They cannot defeat 6 ships." "But they are trying anyway." Yuna's voice was filled with wonder. "Why, they could escape. They could save themselves." Tiho did not answer. He had no answer. He had never seen anything like this in all his long life. In the cargo bay, the Keth gathered together, holding their children close. They could not fight. They could not run. All they could do was watch and pray. Little Bora pressed her face against the viewport, watching the Terran ship prepare for battle. Her dim light flickered slightly brighter than before. "The humans will save us," she said with the simple faith of a child. They promised. The first volley hit the Indomitable like a hammer from the gods. 6 Vorn ships fired at once, their combined weapons tearing through space toward the lone Terran vessel. The shields flared bright blue as they absorbed the impact. The entire ship shook violently. Crew members grabbed onto railings and consoles to stay on their feet. "Shields at 70%, Minyu reported, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7, damage control teams responding." Commander Park gripped the arms of her chair. "Return fire, target the lead ship." The Indomitable's weapons roared to life. Massive plasma cannons fired across the void, slamming into the first Vorn warship. The enemy's shields flickered but held. They were strong ships, built for war and cruelty. But so was the Indomitable. The Terran vessel charged forward, not retreating but advancing. The Vorn had expected their enemy to run or surrender. They had not expected an attack. Their formation broke slightly as they adjusted to this unexpected tactic. "Focus fire on their weapon systems," Hana ordered. "If we can disable their guns, we have a chance." "Commander, their lead ship is targeting our engine section." Evasive maneuvers, hard to port. The Indomitable twisted in space, dodging the worst of the incoming fire, but not all of it. Another volley struck the ship's flank, sending a shudder through the hull. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. The lights flickered. "Shields at 40%, Minyu said. "We cannot take many more hits like that." Hana did not respond. Her eyes were fixed on the tactical display, calculating distances and angles. She saw something. A gap in the enemy formation. One ship had moved too far from the others, trying to get a better firing angle. "Target Vessel 3, she said sharply. "All weapons, fire everything." The Indomitable unleashed a devastating barrage. Plasma bolts and missiles streaked across space, converging on the isolated Vorn ship. Its shields collapsed under the onslaught. Explosions ripped through its hull. In seconds, the vessel was nothing but burning wreckage. "One down," Minyu breathed. But the victory came at a cost. The other Vorn ships responded with fury, pouring fire into the Indomitable. The ship rocked again and again. Alarms screamed throughout every corridor. Shields failing. Hull integrity compromised on multiple decks. Fire in engineering. In the engine room, Jisoo was fighting a different kind of battle. She and her team worked frantically to keep the reactor stable as the ship took hit after hit. Smoke filled the air. The temperature rose to dangerous levels. One of her engineers collapsed from exhaustion and had to be dragged to safety. "Keep the power flowing," Jisoo shouted. "No matter what, keep the power flowing." In the medical bay, Doyeon treated wounded crew members as fast as they arrived. The room was filled with blood and screaming. He had no time to rest, no time to think. He simply moved from patient to patient, doing what he could. A young ensign grabbed his arm. "Are we going to make it?" Doyeon looked into the young man's frightened eyes. "Yes," he said firmly. "We are going to make it. Now hold still while I stop this bleeding." On the bridge, the situation was growing desperate. 2 more Vorn ships had been damaged, but the Indomitable was falling apart. Entire sections of the ship had lost power. The shields were gone. Only the armor plating remained between the crew and the vacuum of space. Blood ran down Hana's forehead from a cut caused by flying debris. She wiped it away with the back of her hand and kept giving orders. "Minyu, status on weapons. Port batteries are offline. Starboard batteries at 50%. Missile launchers have 3 rounds remaining." 3 rounds against 4 remaining enemy ships. The mathematics were impossible. But Hana was not done yet. Yunji, open a channel, all frequencies, broadcast to the Vorn fleet and the Velith's hope. Channel open, Commander. Hana stood from her chair. Her uniform was torn, her face was bloodied, but her voice was strong. Vorn Syndicate, you have fought well, but you have not won. As long as this ship has power, as long as a single Terran stands, we will not stop fighting. You may destroy us, but we will make you bleed for every inch. We will make you remember this day. We will make you fear the name Indomitable. She paused. Is that worth it, for some slaves? For cargo that will fight you every step of the way, knowing that freedom is possible? Ask yourselves, is this worth it? Silence. Then the Vorn commander's voice came back, filled with anger and something else, something that might have been uncertainty. You are insane, Terran. Yes, Hana agreed. We are. That is what makes us dangerous. Another long pause. The Vorn ships held their position but did not fire. Then slowly, they began to turn. Minyu stared at his display in disbelief. Commander, they are retreating. They are jumping to hyperspace. One by one, the remaining Vorn ships vanished into the fold of space, leaving behind only their damaged vessels and the wreckage of their fallen comrade. They were gone. Hana let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. Her legs suddenly felt weak, and she had to grab the back of her chair for support. We did it, she whispered. We actually did it. The bridge erupted in exhausted cheers. Crew members embraced each other, laughing and crying at the same time. They had faced certain death and somehow survived. On the Velith's hope, the Keth watched in stunned silence as the enemy fleet disappeared. Then slowly, they began to understand what had happened. The humans had won. Against impossible odds, against overwhelming force, they had won. Yuna felt tears streaming down her face. Around her, the Keth were crying too, but these were tears of joy, of relief, of overwhelming gratitude. The children were cheering. The elders were weeping openly. Captain Tiho fell to his knees, unable to stand. They did it, he said over and over. They saved us. The Indomitable was barely holding together. Smoke poured from a dozen hull breaches. Entire sections were dark and empty. The ship listed slightly to one side, its maneuvering systems damaged. But she was still there, still between the Keth and harm, still protecting those who could not protect themselves. Hours later, when emergency repairs had stabilized both ships, Yuna found Do-Yun sitting alone in a corridor of the Velith's hope. He was exhausted, his uniform stained with blood and soot, but he smiled when he saw her. Your people are safe, he said. We will reach the station in another day. From there you can find a new home. Yuna sat down beside him. For a long moment she did not speak. Then she asked the question that had been burning inside her since the battle ended. Why did you stay? You could have run, you could have lived. Do-Yun thought about the question carefully. Because some things are worth dying for, he said at last. Freedom, innocence, the chance to give others a future. These things matter more than our own lives. But we are strangers. We are not your people. No, Do-Yun looked at her with tired but gentle eyes. But you are people. That is enough. Yuna felt her heart fill with an emotion she could not name. It was gratitude and wonder and something deeper, something she had never felt before. Your species is strange, she said softly, but I think you may be the best strangers in the galaxy. Do-Yun laughed. We try. 10 years later, the Keth had rebuilt. They had found a new world, founded new cities, and created a new civilization. They prospered and grew strong. In the center of their capital city, they built a monument. It was a statue of a warship, scarred and battered but standing tall. The ship's name was inscribed on its base in both Keth language and Terran script. Indomitable. And beneath the name, 4 words that every Keth child learned from the day they were born. They came for us. Yuna, now an elder herself, would often bring young ones to the monument and tell them the story. She told them about the darkness and the fear, about drifting alone in the void with no hope, about the day a Terran warship appeared and changed everything. "Remember this," she would say. "Remember that when we had nothing, when we were lost and dying, strangers came to save us, not for reward, not for trade, simply because it was right." The children would listen with wide eyes, their skin glowing bright with wonder. "And if you ever meet someone who needs help," Yuna would continue, "someone weak or lost or afraid, you know what to do. Help them," the children would answer in unison, "because that is what the humans would do." Yuna would smile and nod, her old light flickering softly in the evening air. "That is what the humans would do."